And welcome to Matrix Live Season 6, Episode 4, where we're doing something a little bit different this week. In fact, we've been talking about doing this for ages now, haven't we?
Yeah, for sure.
But we should probably, if people don't remember who Nad is, this is Nad. Oh, wrong way. That's Nad. There we go. And he is the product lead for Element these days. And I guess let me do some introduction of what we're going to be talking about on this, which is some people might remember in the dim and distant past, a couple of years ago, we did some formal roadmap planning. In fact, you can even see the detritus of it behind my head still, which subsequently turned from Post-its into GitHub project boards. But basically, we did some we basically planned out a public roadmap of work for the back-end team, so Synapse and Dendrite development, and then Element Web, or Riot Web as it was at the time, and then Riot Mobile. And recorded some Matrix Lives with Neil and Tom and Manu, respectively, talking through those roadmaps and published some blog posts on it. And it was all great and well, and we actually basically stuck to those roadmaps for a while afterwards. But like anybody who has ever done a roadmap planning thing, they seem to come in kind of life cycles of lasting like a year or so before they get overtaken by distractions and new projects and the whole company shifting or the whole project shifting, and then get a bit abandoned. However, over the last couple of months, we've been on a mission to fix that for Element going forwards. And we've done it completely differently this time, in that we have done one true official product roadmap, which is in the public domain, or largely in the public domain, and sits here on GitHub. And you can see it right here up at github.com, vector.im/roadmap/project/1. This has been put together by Nad in his capacity as coordinator of the product design of Element in a effort which is succeeding to go and make Element more coherent across both mobile and web, and also make sure that any matrixy backend support that is needed to make Element look good and work well is also considered in the context of the app, rather than it being sort of driven the other way around. I hope that makes some kind of sense. Now, I should stop waffling. Tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, just maybe to build on that a little bit, I think one of the differences with how we're working now compared to the previous roadmaps is that before, the previous roadmaps were kind of platform, we almost had independent roadmaps per platform, which kind of made sense from kind of the legacy of the project of, basically building different SDKs for different platforms and those being their own discrete things. And then where we try to echo the same features across different platforms, whereas this is really just cross-platform. As an end user, I just want a thing to exist. And we're planning for all platforms at the same time and really just using like good, coherent implementations that let people solve their goals across iOS, web, and Android, just drive forward Matrix as a whole, pretty much. So the idea with all of these is that it defaults to cross-platform, and we make sure that people can have a good time, irrespective of whether they use Android or iOS, or a mixture of web and iOS, or whatever it may be, pretty much.
So tell us about the columns that we have going on here.
Yeah, so the columns are deliberately abstract in terms of timing, and there are entire sort of books and schools of thought on different types of thematic roadmaps and so on. And what we've opted for is for now to represent things that are actively in flight that we have really high confidence in, and then effectively diminishing levels of confidence as you go through the columns to the right. And when I say confidence, it's just generally confidence in when we'll deliver them and whether the feature will exist in the first place. There's some stuff in here, like, for example, let me think of an example. Let's have a look. Some stuff like custom emoji that's in sort of the middle of later, where we think like, oh, you know what, that's actually really a good idea. We have like medium confidence that should exist. But we just don't know when, so therefore it's just kind of mid-table obscurity in the grand scheme of things. And then there's other things in sort of later still or future where we think they might be a good idea, but honestly we haven't done the work to figure out if they would even exist ever. So really, like the column should represent confidence rather than reality of time or anything like that.
You got 2 mobile PWAs on your future column. Should I delete one of them?
Yeah, please.
Bing. Oh, hopefully. How are you deleting this? Would it be too obvious to think that the delete key or the backspace key would delete? Come on, GitHub. Don't let me down now. Don't tell me it's a GitHub issue. I think the entirety of GitHub just crashed under me, or at least the roadmap thing. Let me just refresh.
That's all right. I like celebrating when people's software breaks because it makes me feel like I'm not alone in the world, or we're not alone in the world, especially when it's from big teams. It's great.
It really won't let me delete the mobile PWA's card. I go and select the delete notes and thing on the context menu, and the context menu crashes. Let me refresh again. Do you want to try deleting it?
Sure.
That's why we've got 2 of them stuck forever. Anyway, we're not meant to be debugging GitHub projects UI. So I think personally, I'm very comfortable with the column-based approach here of now, next, later, later still, future. We need to spell out to everybody in the audience that we are making, that none of this is set in stone at all. In fact, it's very much in flux. We're constantly shifting these cards back and forth between the columns, depending on how things get prioritized. And also, we haven't gone through it together for a while. To say the least. So there's possibility that we might even be doing some shuffling around and basically turn Matrix Live into an informal roadmap planning session, which would probably be no bad thing. Another thing worth noting is the public view of this has some of the cards invisible, and they link through to our internal product private GitHub repository issues. Things like, I don't know, Jitsi authentication and authorization. And the reason for this is that some of these roadmap items, basically it's a bug or it's a side effect of GitHub's access control system, that some of these features and element are driven by people who are paying for them as customers or sponsoring the work for them. And so the card that defines how that feature is being implemented or that issue typically has a whole bunch of customer information on it, which for the privacy of the customer, unless they particularly want it to be in the public domain, we put on the private repository. That means, though, that when we put the card onto the GitHub board, it gets made invisible by GitHub, irritatingly. What we need to do is to go through creating public placeholder cards, which then link through to the private links so that everybody can see that issue 40 on the Vector IAM product board is actually Jitsi authentication and authorization, i.e. locking down Jitsi so that only Matrix users can access it rather than running a free-for-all Jitsi for the entire internet. Which, by the way, is not a great idea, given that you can use Jitsi as an open proxy for connecting to anything. So sometimes it's kind of useful to do that as a service to society or a disservice to society, but some people want to be able to run a lockdown Jitsi. So basically, apologies that some of these are invisible on the public roadmap. Now, possibly by the time you listen to this, we'll have gone through switching out those cards with placeholders so that we can both protect the private information for folks who are helping make it happen, whilst also showing people what's on the roadmap. Disclaimers over. Shall we walk the board a bit?
Yep, sure.
What's improved VoIP now?
So effectively, we've been putting in a lot of effort, both on the usability side and on the engineering side, to increase the stability of VoIP all around, and just make it work predictably, basically. So on the usability side, the idea is that everything will be kind of room first still. So it's very much I communicate in a room, and then I want to extend that, the message timeline with some synchronous communication. I want to click a call button or a video button, and that belongs to the room. There's kind of 2 halves to that, where one is just improving the usability and implementation of that all round, with things like toasts for when calls are in progress, things like picture-in-picture, so when you switch to another room, that then minimizes into a nice little hovering sort of window that I can drag around and stuff like that.
Ooh,
so
can we drag him now?
What's that, sorry?
Can we drag him? I haven't tried.
Dragging is planned, and I don't believe that we've started on the dragging code yet, but it's there. I say it's there. The idea, hopefully, yes, is the short answer to your question. But yeah, very much. So yeah, there's kind of two parts to usability. One side is those kinds of niceties, and then the other side is better parity between native matrix calls and calls placed on Jitsi. And the reason for that is just that we've basically found that people don't really, if the experience is too sort of disparate between the matrix calls and Jitsi calls, people just get confused. And so we're just working to unify that UX, which is, involves kind of unifying some of the element and matrix native UX, and also improving or polishing some of the Jitsi UX as well, basically to make them feel more as one.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking way, way better. I got a video call the other day, and I hadn't honestly been tracking the design work on this, and it was wow, this looks better. And suddenly the one-to-one call, and particularly the picture-in-picture is just revolutionary. So really, really fun to see that. Also, the reliability seems to have improved a lot. And again, I haven't been actually tracking to see what the folks working on it have done there. I think some of it might be Synapse performance, now that matrix.org Synapse is not completely overloaded all the time. But do you know if there's been that much actual improvements to the VoIP signaling implementation on web or Android?
I think most of it's yet to ship, to be honest. So yeah, I think your hunch on Synapse performance is probably right.
Either way, it's really usable. If people haven't been trying one-to-one VoIP recently, what are we going to do about the ringtone? Because that's awful.
I have on my list to, in fact, open shout out if anyone knows any, either some really amazing open source sound packs, or any producers, I guess.
I mean, we used to have, so we used to work with a professional sound producer who did the original sound pack prior to Matrix, and we still have all of that. He literally put it on his SoundCloud, and rather bizarrely labeled it Matrix the other day. So, and it's really good. I basically asked him about 10 years ago now, hey, Oishin, a guy's called Oishin Lanu, used to play support for U2 back in the day, and said, hey, can we have some Brian Eno style ringtones? And he went away and he came back with some amazing Brian Eno ringtones. So we have them, and we've got the rights to use them. So we could just switch to that. Whereas the current horrible ear-splitting thing was, I think, me in a quick hack just needing something, and I didn't take the time to look for the original ringtones. So, I mean, I don't think we need to open it up to the floor necessarily. I mean, we could, but God, at this rate, we're going to be about 6 hours to go through all the cards.
Yeah, but I just made a note on my list, and we can figure out those ringtones if we've already got some awesome ones.
Let's talk through the now ones, and we can cherry pick some of the interesting future ones. What's all this about social login?
Effectively, that's just making it it's improving our SSO implementation and just making it super simple for people to get started if they prefer to log in using an SSO provider. I believe there's a lot of lifting going on the Synapse side to be able to support multiple SSO providers, which isn't a thing that exists today, even though I think the spec might have actually been around for a while, or the MSC rather. And then we're working on the clients just to have a good experience where you can see which 5 providers your home server supports, and then continue with that, and all of that makes sense.
It is looking really sexy, because actually on Develop, the initial wave of work for that has already landed in terms of rejigging the server selection. Again, I didn't realize it had landed. I hit refresh on Develop and signed up for an account, and it was ooh, this is better. And the server can also provide avatars or artwork for the SSO providers, so you can plug in arbitrary one server side and pick between them and have the whole, here are all your social login icons in a row. Very exciting. Spaces. This will be quick.
I mean, maybe we could try to exercise some kind of brevity on this. Otherwise, I think we could be here all day. But effectively, this is being able to organize rooms into groups. And so, as far as the user experience is concerned, it's a spatial model really similar to what people expect from things like Slack, where they have the workspace model in the leftmost panel, and same with the Discord UX of being able to switch between different servers, but with some more niceties. So because Matrix is more kind of multifactorial in both public and private communication, our Spaces implementation effectively should be way more flexible, and you should be able to facilitate, being able to create private groups of rooms for yourself just to organize your view of Matrix, as well as create private workspaces, which are kind of internal and invite only, but a good place to work on projects or if you're on a team, as well as to create spaces which are more useful for like public communities where you just want to create a public community and broadcast it and have a really great time. I don't know, you create a donuts community and you want to talk about donuts and you want to tell everyone to come join the donuts community. Is the kind of high-level pitch for spaces.
You're talking about that on Open Tech will save us next Wednesday, or?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's not deep dive any more into it. There's lots of fun discussion going on, though. But the implementation's coming together on Element Web, and Tech Guy, or Michael's been hacking away on it. So exciting, and they're having a bit of an argument over how much of a hierarchy we should be exposing in the left panel or not, and whether it should be a massive IDE-style tree view, or should it be columns, or should it be flat, or some mixture of all three. So watch this space. On the Matrix.2 side, I can talk quickly about that. Matrix.2 was originally written by me in a massive rush as a temporary placeholder in 2014, and therefore, of course, lasted for 6 years without any changes at all until the summer, where it got a redesign and also a new implementation. The polishing the implementation has ended up being a bit awkward, and it turns out that particularly getting the privacy and usability balance right is a huge pain in the ass, because we want the new implementation to support peeking into the rooms which you're linking to, which means you need a server with which to peek by, which means you need to select a server, except if you're a casual user, you don't know what a matrix server is, and why should you pick matrix.org versus a different one, blah, 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 blah. I think we've finally figured it out, and actually what we've ended up doing is to kind of pare it down to a really simple implementation in the end, and Bruno is just finishing that off right now. Have you seen the latest screencasts, Nat?
I have not. I've been off for the last couple of days.
Of course you have. So Bruno's been hacking away, and it's looking very promising. And I'm trying to think what will happen if I alt-tab to my, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to alt-tab to my Element Web and see what room I end up in, and hopefully it won't be a really sensitive one. And then I can. And here's one of the internal videos of what it's looking like right now. It says loading privacy tools.io, privacy policy. Oh, that's exciting. So it's gone in. So we've now got privacy policy support on it, which is interesting and surprising. I wasn't expecting to see that. Oh no, it's just a link. That's fine. It's all good. And let's look at another one quickly, which is just showing screenshots. It's very blurry, showing Bruno linking to himself. But yeah, basically all new Matrix.2. It'll be the third iteration of it. Should be landing in the coming days, possibly next week. So that's kind of exciting. Cool. Let's go back to the roadmap. We're almost there for... Actually, we're not anything like almost there for things in flight. Let's go quicker, as you say. What's all this about improving invites?
Effectively, that's just reducing any friction, as much friction as we can, rather, around if you want to invite someone onto Matrix or Element, and increasing the success of them actually reaching you. So there's a bit of magic between, we're looking at things like when you receive a link, can we somehow in a privacy preserving manner store the destination that you're trying to reach, so that once you successfully install the app on mobile, for example, you then launch the mobile app, and then the app is able to just point you towards the right person or the right room, and so on and so forth. And there's just a lot of dancing between several services, between a bit of Matrix.2, potentially things like Google Play lets us deep link as one example, and the specific platform implementations, but basically reducing friction around invites all around.
And a lot of that's already happened on Android, right? I saw that Valera had done some really exciting stuff to make invites not suck and have QR codes. Oh, in fact, there's the whole demo session that we recorded last week that we haven't shown anyone yet, which has all the work that Valera did on that. So heads up, there will be demos published as part of Matrix Live probably next week or week after, showing that stuff off. Then instrumentation is fun because when we look at our daily active users on the matrix.org server and it goes flat or it goes down, we really want to know why. And historically, we've not done very well at knowing why, and whether we've broken something in Element or whether we're losing people here or there or anywhere. And there's a lot of work going on at the moment to try to get the aggregate stats on where we lose people along the way into a shape that we can reason about. It's almost there. Watch the space on precisely what form it will take. We've ended up playing both with Matomo and Countly, a different analytics thing, both of which are privacy preserving and ones we can run ourselves, but both of which have pros and cons of various flavors. So we'll give an update once we figure out where that's going. Meanwhile, develop.element.io is all over the place in terms of experimenting with different ones. So apologies if you're on develop and notice the analytics switching around from under you a bit.
One thing I would just add really briefly is that I know that analytics is a dirty word if you're wearing your privacy hat, but just one thing to kind of underscore here would be, like, firstly, that the reason why we would be doing anything with this is literally just to ensure that the product isn't broken and to ensure that our features aren't trashed, basically. So there's a genuine sort of that's the driver for that, basically, rather than us wanting to gather people's data or anything like that. And the second thing is that we will be just defaulting to a place of anonymization, even once you've consented. So, like, this isn't a case of, oh, we're implementing analytics and we're just going to try and hoover up as much data as possible. We'll be being super conscious in every step of the way with this, basically. We'll also be blogging about this as we go live with specifics on implementations that we arrive at. But at the same time, we do need to collect some data in order to actually inform good thinking. So
there's nothing quite like the sinking feeling that the active users go down and we don't know what we've done wrong. It's a slightly panicky, scrabbling at an icy wall feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me go into some of the more interesting internal ones. God, we're going to be here for years at this rate. Let's on the SIP bridge side of things. This one is interesting in that it's actually it's going and having proper VoIP connectivity to match the nice glossy new VoIP user interface that we were talking about earlier, connecting through to the PSTN. It's being done for a specific customer, and it's unclear where it's going to fit into the great Element sort of product arsenal, whether it's going to be an EMS thing, whether it's going to be open source or that sort of thing. The good news is that it works and it's looking pretty good, but it's in the final stages of development. Watch this space in terms of what we do with it.
And just in case you're watching this and you don't know what SIP is, as I didn't the first time I heard the acronym, effectively this is being able to bridge out to the real world phone network, basically. So being sort of Skype style, being able to dial out to a phone number or have a phone number come into your VoIP-based account, pretty much.
Well, SIP origination and termination, as VoIP geeks would put it. We've already spoken about the Jitsi auth stuff, which turns out to be really important for avoiding every Jitsi being an open relay. And by the way, if you are running Jitsi without in its current state, you might want to check the bandwidth usage on it, and also double check your deny relay IP, deny peer IPs, which is how you blacklist people from relaying into internal bits of your network, which is how Slack got owned again a couple of months ago, and also was written by us. In fact, it was written by Eric on the Synapse team about 10 years ago, back before Matrix, when we needed to lock down Coturn. Element Pro. Want to give us a quick sneak preview of Element Pro, Nad?
Yeah, sure. So this is effectively how am I going to phrase this? So if you want your own server today, you have to be blessed with a certain degree of domain knowledge. You kind of need to know how clients and servers work. You need to be able to have some kind of DevOps chops to be able to do these things. And also you need to understand everything well enough to know that that's what you need to do in the first place. And that's kind of your major option if you're technical. The other option you have is you could use a hosting provider, like, for example, EMS, to commission a server, and then you don't have to worry about any of that, which a lot of people do. But that still comes with the drawback drawback that you still need to kind of discover element, start to use element, figure out if it's a good fit, figure out if matrix is useful for you, and then zoom out to then commission a host again, which is there's just an unnecessary amount of friction there basically. So the idea behind Element Pro is effectively just creating a journey where you can start to use element, you can start to use matrix, you can figure out if it's a good fit for you, and if it is, just to make it as simple as possible in context to then get your own home server, basically. So effectively, it's just a unified journey of I start to use a thing, and at some point I decide to commission my own host, rather than needing to zoom out and then create a host that I then go to kind of separately, effectively.
Precisely. It's looking very, very cool. It's obviously more on the proprietary element paid hosting offering side of things, but will, I think, help critically fund element development, which is always nice. I think. Do you like having a salary, Ned? I like having a salary. We should probably do things which allow us to pay the rent, but also, as you say, just almost make it easier for users to have full autonomy over their data by going and rescuing themselves off the public morass of matrix.org or other public servers and having a server of their own without needing to think about it. Then we've got device dehydration, which has this not basically... it's not turned on, or... I think this one is probably done. This is the whole being able to receive messages when you're logged out everywhere. The problem is that we don't have it enabled on Element Web because it's a security trade-off. But I think we probably need to just figure out whether we're doing that or how we expose it. But the feature itself works and exists, and if you want to dig around in the guts of Element Web, there's probably a config.json button to turn it on. And don't call DMs rooms. How has that ended up being a sponsored thing? Oh, it's not a sponsored thing.
Yeah, just because it fell out of some user testing that was being done by a commercial customer, basically, is the only reason why it's in here. But effectively, it's just some research has revealed that people are confused by the consistent usage of the word rooms everywhere. And people don't think about a person as a room, as one example. So there's just a bit of a wash going through the apps to ensure that we're not using words that confuse people, basically.
I mean, this is a classic one where it should just be a public issue, but it's ended up a private issue because it refers to whoever gave the research by name, and so let's go and make it a public issue with a link back to the one with the juicy, gory, embarrassing details on it. And then hydrogen, which is trundling away, providing crazy i11 capable, super lightweight, I think it's 60k of JavaScript and HTML or something insane, Matrix client. Bruno's been a bit distracted from it by doing the Matrix.2 work and a couple of other bits and bobs, but hydrogen is still bubbling away. God, what should we cherry pick from the other columns?
What are you most excited about? Should we maybe just pick 2 cards each or something, just to be able to talk about exciting things on the horizon?
Yeah, I think I'm going to quickly ask you what a scalable composer is. What the hell's a scalable composer?
It's effectively just a composer that can sing and dance. So there's things that we want to do with widgets in the future.
Are you talking about animated GIF keyboard things at last?
Yeah, exactly. So effectively having a composer that allows a composer to be able to do up to 10 or 20 different things, effectively. So be it sending media, or be it having things like different keyboards on mobile, where maybe you can initiate polls from it, or do GIF searching and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of building, making the composer extensible. Extensible is probably a better word than scalable, to be honest. But effectively, it's that.
That makes sense. I'm amused that it snuck into next somehow without me noticing it. I think that might be you pushing an agenda there. But I agree it would be cool. And having, from a kind of delighting people and making them stick around, and frankly having parity with everybody else, an extensible composer would be good. And I guess the ones I would pick out from here on the next column would be voice messages and location sharing, which are, in fact, are they even being designed? Have we got some designs for voice messages now?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, they're super mature and like they're we've got really nice stuff actually in the pipeline for this.
So the only reason, again, this is as a private issue right now is that it's being funded by one of the government opportunities that is helping keep Element afloat, and so the details and the requirements, etc., are all entangled under NDAs and that sort of thing. But the actual work will all be open source. And the designs will be too when we get there. But those are probably the two ones I'm most excited about because it's kind of almost table stakes. Lots of people seem to just use voice messaging, and I would kill for real-time location sharing. Back when we used to go outside and try to find people in real life, it was really useful to know where people were. What are your favorites?
Yeah, I'm actually personally really missing voice messages because I lived in Asia for 6 years, and any sort of kind of radical or character-based language, like a lot of countries just kind of default to voice, basically because it's harder to type on a mobile keyboard. And I got into a habit of just almost exclusively using voice messages for like 6 years, so I really personally miss that at the moment. I'd also love to get into some. This is maybe slightly off topic, but in the future, I think it'd be really fun to look at things like captioning. Like, can we accompany voice messages with like subtitles so that if you can't listen to a message, you can at least read a summary of it on your home screen and stuff like that. And then I'd like to anyway.
Doing that in a privacy-preserving way is going to be interesting. Yeah, we're going to follow all of your voice messages.
Well, we can do it locally before we send it, and then you're just sending a text sort of accompaniment to it, like a related message.
Yeah, and that's how we diversified into like federated machine learning, machine translation running in WASM in a browser, so we don't run it all through DeepL or Google or whoever. It would be fun.
Yeah. But that's been my like personal desire for like the last decade. Like every time I love sending voice messages, I hate receiving them. Mm-hmm. Is my kind of my sort of take on that. But
have
anyway.
you used some Ribbit or come across Ribbit?
No. Was that an app or is that?
It was a startup that got acquired, poor things, by BT ages ago, like 15 years ago. And they were the very first people to do smart voicemail, like before the iPhone came along. And their big selling point is that it would transcribe all of your voicemail messages and just send it to you as a message. And it actually worked. And it was a really, really good product. And BT grabbed it to be the centerpiece of their 21st century network, and they were never, ever seen again. So I've also been looking forward to having decent like voice message transcription by default. And the tech exists.
Cool. I'll check them out actually, just for fun. But the other thing I was going to say with that you reminded me of there is we're sort of talking about this quite jovially and just sort of like it's kind of wish list, but actually, especially if we look at things like augmented reality and our sort of AR-based futures, like this might be way more important. Like we could at some point be looking at an Element or Hydrogen experience where you don't need to look at it, where it's really built for, I don't know, sort of wearables and even things like AirPods and so on, and just literally a voice-based element, which I think would be really cool.
Yeah, hell yeah. Have you got that in the future column by any chance?
I'm going to add it.
Do the entire thing as AR. Okay, so what are your favourite ones from the next ones?
Maybe I would like to call out threads. So message threading has been sort of on the horizon for a while, and we should start working on this properly in the coming months, I'd say, with broad strokes. But there's kind of two problems to solve, I think, here. One is just improving signal-to-noise ratio in conversation. So at the moment today, it's very easy to talk over each other on two different subjects in one room, and that's just infuriating when you've got one person talking about one thing, talking about something else, and it's just a mess. So there's that problem to solve, and most apps seem to default to this kind of sidebar experience of, well, we'll just let you thread off to the side, and there's the kind of spatial model that's associated with that. And so we want to solve that problem. We haven't figured out the exact solution. But the other thing that we want to solve is the same problem, but also from a moderation point of view, where if you are moderating kind of really large, high traffic rooms, like, should you be able to also organize the conversation as well? And that's something that I think perhaps Dulip have done some stuff on, but aside from that, it's very immature, like in the industry, I'd say, as a whole. And it's interesting because forum software got this right, like back in the day. but messaging software doesn't seem to.
Yeah, I call it retrospective threading, and I've always wanted it as a thing. And I think Zulip are the only people who have it as the ability to re-thread and move things between threads. We've designed it in on almost designed it in on the current MSc for threading, but the current implementation of Cerulean that we've been playing with doesn't have it yet. I think I might actually have a peer-to-peer Cerulean running on my laptop at the moment, so I'm just going to risk going and connecting blindly to localhost on port 3000, and here I am, logged in to, I think this is a libp2p based peer-to-peer Cerulean. I'm logged in as Bob, and as Bob I can say, hello world, and start building up a thread. Sorry, Nad can't see this. And it's kind of Twitter style semantics, and I can go linearly like this. Yay. Or if I go back and start another branch here, then it starts building out this threading like this. And I think that this, if I open up another Cerulean, I think on that, yeah, so this one's logged in as Alice, and it's a bit clunky that if I want to link through to this conversation here, I'm going to need to do this to the URLs, basically. Sorry, now this would be amazing when you watch it afterwards. And so here I am on the Alice side, seeing the same conversation. I can now respond as Alice. I'm responding as Alice, and it goes down to the bottom. And I don't know, let's respond on the other branch too. Ooh. And it keeps building up. Go and refresh here, and you can see Alice and Bob talking to one another. World first peer-to-peer Cerulean. The threading MSc is looking pretty good, and this is real code with a peer-to-peer dendrite running on my laptop, and is the shape of things to come. We just need to figure out how the hell to mix that into Element. Is this going to be you go to a room and it looks like Twitter, or you go to this view and it looks like a Hacker News or a Reddit style thing, or is it going to be the horrible thing that you get with Slack with a side panel or whatever? So, I have frozen my video. Hopefully that doesn't mean that it's all dead. Let me pause for one. No, I think I'm still recording. Okay. I might just kill my preview given it's no longer working. Okay, yeah, so threads. Fun. Sorry. What else?
No, just on that note, with the kind of potentially more kind of complex paths, I think this might end up playing out more like an encryption style project where the usability might be one of the hardest chunks, rather than just the engineering where, figuring out these different threading models, like does a Twitter style threading model or a Reddit style threading model or a forum style, whatever it may be, does that make sense in the context of real-time communication? Pretty much, figuring that out, I think, will be the sort of hard part, at least on the product side.
Yeah, definitely. But at least we've got the infrastructure to build on, and honestly, that has been a bit of a pain. But the MSc is looking pretty good, and the implementation works, as you saw. So exciting times there on Threads. Any others?
I could go for hours on all of this. So I'm trying to exercise restraint and just pick out things that I think might be interesting for
fluid modals. I fix for you. We should go and take number 20 off, or at least we should use my fluid modal implementation to make them nice and fluid.
Yeah, I think we've got a little bit of I don't think we've implemented them everywhere yet, or not ported them everywhere yet, so I'll keep that just there for now.
It was just the engine, but it needs to actually be hooked up. The hard bit's done.
I think, maybe one other thing that I'd sort of call out, maybe two things, just super briefly. One is, it's in future at the moment, but a cryptographic login I think would be really interesting to talk about, because that would reduce a lot of friction. So is it better if you give a very brief intro to this, or is it better?
Yeah, no, I can do it. So at the moment we have the drama that you have your password to get into your account, and then the separate security or recovery passphrase to access your encryption history. And this is the idea of combining the two together so that you have one true passphrase, which is also used to unlock your history. And obviously more usable, but has the disadvantage that if that gets leaked, then your entire end-to-end encryption is owned as well. I think probably on balance, that is optimizing for usability over the additional security is wise. Plus, if you're using single sign-on, they decouple again. So if you were using a separate identity provider for your basic login stuff, then it just falls back to being the recovery passphrase. You kind of get the same level of security you had in the first place. So the only problem is that it's quite invasive change, but I would be well up for doing it. Quite how we prioritize that versus MLS, though, or other, like being able to share encrypted history before people join a room, if it's a private room and you just trust the person you've invited, all that sort of thing, is a bit less clear.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm definitely interested in that universe where you don't have to remember two passwords and you don't really know the difference between the two passwords, even though they make sense to any of us with a cryptography hat on. They just don't make, just doesn't make sense, like in reality for end users. Cool. And then just super briefly, the other one that I wanted to call out was actually notifications, where just as a really high level broadcast, at some point, I'm anticipating that we'll sort of do a concerted effort on improving handling notifications, where notifications and things like do not disturb and custom statuses will all end up kind of dovetailing together.
Where is it? I've lost it on the boards.
It's kind of split between different columns at the moment, and I maybe could do with just unifying them as sort of one thing, because the reality is that we would end up, it's hard to action those things without the others, I think. So, yeah. Or rather, I think one would be improving notifications as one system, and another would be custom status and do not disturb as a kind of second orthogonal effort.
Yeah, gotcha. So the actual notifications one is public and it's in the next column. And we did do a lot of work on it, but then decided to switch to spaces and single sign-on social login. But I'm also really keen to get back to it because we had an entire implementation that made them not suck, separate to the do not disturb stuff, which needs to actually land. Cool. Well, we've been at this for ages and we've only covered like a snidget of the board, but I thought it would be useful for us to show folks, where the roadmap planning is going and to show them that they can follow along and see what's happening. And if anybody out there wants to make stuff happen sooner, then you can always throw money at Element to go and help prioritize getting stuff done. And...
Or also join the team as well, right? We're hiring.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to work on any of this.
Yeah, although I guess we're going to get into trouble for abusing Matrix Live as a Element vehicle. Oh. But then again, this one is about Element rather than Matrix for once. So hopefully it's been interesting anyway. Thanks, Nad, for taking the time to talk it through. We should do this more often. I can't remember actually when we last together went through the product roadmap board itself. There was a lot of meta discussion about how we should structure it, but not necessarily what goes on it. But it's looking pretty good to me.
Cool. Yeah, I guess now that it exists, we can talk about it. So yep. Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, let's get back to actually building some of these things. Speak to you soon.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.